Gaming isn't dying, but it's getting more expensive, like a lot more. And if you've been feeling priced out lately, trust me, it's not in your head. But here's the twist. I actually agree with it, and I don't think it's a bad thing. So let me hit record real quick and explain why. So what's good, y'all? My name is Jay, and today we're going to be diving into the shift that's happening into the gaming industry around rising costs. Just like with anything else in the world of consumer products, games, consoles, subscriptions, prices are climbing. And while inflation plays a role, it goes a little bit deeper than that. To really understand how we got here, we have to rewind a bit. And that's a whole nother video I want to work on, covering on the evolution of the industry, the gaming industry as a whole, and how we came from cheat codes and memory cards to $120 deluxe editions. Look how far we've come. But for today, I just want to focus on where we're at. Gaming was and becoming even more like a luxury. And whether you like it or not, the price hike is real. So now I'm not saying every $70 game is worth it. Far from it, actually, because there's a lot of stinkers out there. But what I am saying is the price of gaming as a whole had to go up eventually. And if you're anything like me back in the good old days, as they say, can't believe I'm saying that now, but I used to buy my mom used to buy me games when I was a kid, and I'm talking like the PS1 titles, the GameCube titles. They were like $40 max, $20 on a good day, boom, that was a win. And let's be real here, like your dollar used to stretch a lot further than it does now. But truth is, gaming has always kind of been a niche hobby, and now though the barrier to entry is looking real blurry. Let's start with the obvious. The games themselves, $70 is the baseline for AAA titles, and with Super Mario Kart World clocking in at $80 for a racing game, we might be looking at a new standard. So then you got the hardware. The bare minimum for a console is usually like $500, and to be fair, that hasn't changed much. I vaguely remember the PS3 being that much at launch. Even back then, mothers were clutching their pearls as they anticipated little Jimmy begging for that box on Christmas Day. But where things really got wild was and is PC gaming. Like one graphics card alone, that's like $800 to 4K range just for a graphics card. You still gotta get the rest of the parts. And I will say though that there are a lot more different avenues where gaming fits into nowadays. Like there's something for everyone. It has evolved more than just your standard disc plug and play. We got like mobile games, VR games, live service games like Fortnite, League, Marvel Rivals, and they're all free, technically, right? But let's be honest here, free to play still costs. You'll fall into that microtransaction trap real quick. And with battle passes, skins, cosmetics, it all adds up. And I don't care what anyone says, my win rate does go up when I got my Venom skin shaking ass before the match starts. Let's be clear. But you see what I mean though, right? Like you end up spending more over time than the game itself is actually even worth. And games, that's $1 billion industry off digital dopamine. And I'm a victim. Don't ask me how much I dropped on Honkai Star Rail. Just know, I've come a long way. The real question becomes, why is gaming so expensive now? So by now, I think we all know gaming has an identity. It's a full-blown culture. It's marketable, it's fashionable, it's got clout. Your favorite influencer probably plays games on the side. Hell, my eye doctor plays Destiny. You know, yo granny probably hogging up all the internet right now playing Cooking Mama, right? Like, it's not, this ain't a niche anymore. So gaming just, you know, it's not for dudes in the basement running WoW raids. Those days are over, right? Like, I mean, they're probably still down there playing like Final Fantasy 14 now. But, you know, what I'm saying is the culture's evolved. It's no longer just fun. It's becoming something aspirational, you know, something like luxury adjacent, and that's opened the door for luxury pricing. And if we talk about like how development is, I mean, the costs have just clearly exploded. Like, big studios are dropping, you know, 100 mil or more to make just one game. You know, that's far more than just movie budget levels. Like, blockbuster films are out of those ranges. I think even GTA 6 is going to be estimated at $1 billion in the next like year or so when it comes out. You know, and like when a game flops, it can wipe out an entire studio completely. So yeah, that $70 price tag that we're seeing, it's not just random, you know, like those are things like that is set for the survival of the industry or of that studio for that game that it released, you know. And on top of that, and I know no one really likes talking about the economy of things, you know, like inflation and supply chain issues and hardware shortages, but although things affect it and everything's going up, and that doesn't make gaming immune to any of that. And, you know, remember all those live service games I mentioned previously, you know, the ones loaded with tons of cosmetics and battle passes? Yeah, like those models are by design. You know, that is clearly intentional. And these companies aren't targeting casual players anymore. They don't care about the casual player experience. They are after the whales, you know, like the big spenders, ones who will drop, you know, absurd like $300 on a skin and not even blink, right? Like, so if that's not like luxury psychology, I don't know what is. Look, beyond the obvious corporate greed, I think there's something deeper going on here. Like I mentioned, like a psychological shift. Gaming used to be cheap escapism, you know, something you did to zone out, have fun, get lost in another world, you know. At least that's what I did for sure. But now it's becoming like a status symbol, like especially for content creators and streamers and anyone tapped into like the online gaming culture. If you can't afford to keep up, you know, you don't just, you know, like fall behind on leaderboards, you kind of fall behind in the culture as a whole. And if we're being honest, you know, like us nerds here, we can be a little competitive. When I say the social pressure is heavy, I'm talking about the need to have like the newest console, the top tier skin, or fastest GPU, like it's like some fashion drop. You know, these days people care much less about how well you play and more about whether you got like the latest drip on, you know. You know, performance is cool and all that, but like what your gun sound like, you know what I mean? Like, we not worried about being down 50, you know, but you got that shit on though. but let's talk about it though. Who gets left behind in all this? You know, first off, I'd say the younger players, you know, without disposable income. The kiddos are stuck between bouncing from Fortnite and Minecraft, you know, unless their parents got a bag. If not, they're missing out on all the new releases entirely, you know. And then there's the players in countries where the currency doesn't stack up to the US dollar. You know, I was talking to my Canadian friend about getting Sonic Crossworlds coming up this September. And, you know, like when she told me the CAD price, the Canadian dollar compared to mine in USD, you know, I told her she might have to like run up a second job or something, because that's ghetto. You know what I mean? Like it's real bad over there. And finally, it's just, you know, like everyday people who want to play like a fully fleshed out complete game at a retail price, you know, like the narrative based games, you know, like just no battle pass, no drip bundles, no like deluxe DLC, anything locked behind like a paywall, like just a regular fully fleshed out game. You know, that crowd that still exists, you know, and they're getting boxed out too, because in 2025 a lot of the times, quite often, the base game doesn't mean it's the full game anymore. All right, but enough of the basis. I want to let you know, I want to let you guys know why I actually agree with the price hike. But let me be clear. When I say I support rising prices, I'm not some like undercover corpo shill. All right, like I'm talking about gaming as a whole, like the art form. You know, not every single release, not every mid remake, not every battle pass grind fest or anything like that. The art form is what I'm talking about. Like, I think that has been undervalued for a very long time. And honestly, I feel like games should have hit the $80, $100 range like a decade ago, you know. And before y'all crucify me, you know, in the comments or click off, just hear me out, right? Like, if we really want high quality next gen experiences, you know, somebody's got to pay for it. And price hikes, when done right, could actually help reduce, you know, crunch culture, and if the budgets are respected. And to be honest, we've already been paying these prices from the get-go anyway in these games, so the companies don't really feel the need to, I don't know, flesh out better quality content because we're already paying for the slop anyway. And now, do I think the burden should fall entirely on the consumer? Hell no. Especially not when execs are like cashing fat checks off the backs of overworked dev teams, you know, but that's a separate issue. You know, I don't want y'all to think I'm giving too much of like benefit of the doubt to these game studios when execs and boards are literally known for mismanaging budgets, canceling projects successful or not. And, you know, I mean, we've heard of like these thousands and thousands of layoffs, but the problem isn't inherently cost, it's just greedy mismanagement of that cost. And so it's up to the industry to respect its audience, and it's up to us as consumers to spend on what we think is quality. You know, like our purchasing power matters. But I do believe in better monetization when ethical. It gives studios the freedom and incentive to take more risks, right? Like, we might finally start seeing bold, fresh ideas instead of just safe sequels or the recycled free game slop to cosmetic shop pipeline we've been stuck in for so long. So, you know, like, because when a game really hits, all right, like when it really moves you, you know, it surprises you, it sticks with you, I want, you know, like those artists, you know, those writers, those coders, those designers to be compensated properly, you know. And rising prices should just be its value of the art form finally catching up to its impact. Does that make sense? How can gamers actually adapt to these changes, Jay? What can we actually do? And I think it's pretty difficult because we've come to a period where we've accepted a lot of, you know, the previously mentioned slop and changes in gaming, that shift. And we've accepted a lot, so it would be a little bit more difficult. But I mean, we have shown that when games do flop, we just don't buy it, and it is shown, and the industry has made certain shifts. You know, I think ever since like the I don't know, the 2010s, when the real, they call them microtransactions now, but you know, the OGs will remember they were called loot boxes. I think that's when you're like really started to show the difference here. But I think first and foremost, how to adapt or you know, what can we do for these changes is kind of just the obvious. You know, wait for sales. You know, Steam has a bunch, Game Pass, PlayStation Store sales, they always have some form of heat dropping for the low, you know, if you time it right. Second, I would say embrace indie games. You know, there are so many smaller studios out there pouring their heart into their projects, and a lot of their titles are cheaper, you know, sometimes more original and way less exploitative. You know what I mean? They're not gonna scam you as much than the big budget games. You know what I mean? And third would be just to like not sleep on the older titles. I don't know why we FOMO so hard for every new release. You know, the big games aren't going anywhere. And I don't know about you, but I've met quite a few people. I feel like they're like the newer gen to gaming, to where like they're like graphic purists. So like if it doesn't look fantastic, they won't play it. And just imagine how like absurd that sounds. Like they're missing out on so many different types of games. But you know, let's be real, like a game from 2, 5, even 10 years ago can still hit. You know, like excellence is excellent. Finally, like just like any other hobby, you know, you love, budget accordingly, right? Like treat gaming like music, fashion, sneakers, whatever your thing is. If it brings you joy, make space for it intentionally. So in conclusion, guys, gaming isn't dead, it's just evolving. But if you want to keep up, you've got to rethink how you spend. And so tell me, should gaming be cheaper, or are these prices actually justified, you know, for what we're getting? So, you know, drop the last game you bought in the comments and let me know whether it was worth the money or not. And if you stuck around for this long, I really appreciate you guys for watching, and shout out to the veterans. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.